I have 2 children, middle school age, with my ex. We divorced 5 years ago after I found out he and my former best friend were having an affair. They both tried to apologize and ask for it not to ruin everything, but their actions had already ruined everything. I hate the 2 of them. I no longer care about how they're doing, but for my kids' sake I remain civil. I've never badmouthed them to my kids. I've never told my kids what happened. I would never want my kids to be harmed more by their father's actions than they already were, and the divorce was tough for them, and they had a hard time coming to terms with the changes. They still need therapy for some adjustment issues that have remained. My former best friend hasn't helped it either by trying to continue as best friends despite her actions. It also didn't help that the kids went from their parents living together to their dad living with mom's former friend. But again, my primary focus has been my children. I love my kids more than I hate those 2 repulsive individuals. I love my kids more than myself, so I work so hard to be civil in front of my kids. The last thing I wanted was to make nice with them, but my kids love their dad and that has never changed. My ex and this woman are now married and tried to have children together. In December, she had her 10th miscarriage and had to be rushed to the hospital and into surgery, which left her unable to get pregnant again. I got a call from my ex telling me all this and asking me to bring the children to the hospital to stay until she was ready to leave. It was my parenting time, so I told him I would not bring them to sit and wait. He was very unsettled and told me to bring the kids by and he'd get them to ask me to let them stay. I told him that wasn't happening. He made no more contact after that and he didn't take the kids for his parenting time or contact me about it. His mom reached out and she told me he refused to leave the hospital. He didn't see them until his parenting time came again and she was released. There was a new tension in the air at that point. He was furious with me for keeping the kids from sitting vigil in the hospital with him. Now we have another dilemma that's become an issue. My ex booked a healing getaway for them and they want the kids to go along. It happens during my week and it's a school week. He also wants to take his weeks as normal before and after that, so he would have them for 3 consecutive weeks. From what he stated, he would potentially keep them out of school for that long so the kids could be there to help her recover and grieve knowing she has them, was how he explained it to me. I said no and I explained that I was not letting him take them out of school for a week just for her. I told him the kids are not their emotional support to get them through this and therapy is significantly better. I told him I didn't approve of them missing an extended school period, but I wasn't giving up my week for it. He tried to state the week he missed should be made up for, but our court-ordered parenting plan states if a parent voluntarily doesn't take their week without an agreed-upon make-up period, then the other doesn't need to give up a week in return. I pointed this out to him, and he asked me how I could be so by the book about this. He said human decency would state I should be willing to put aside our differences at a time like this, and that school isn't more important than family. He asked me how I would feel if she ended her life because of this, and my refusal was part of the reason why. I told him I wouldn't feel anything. I told them they lost all their rights for me to feel something for them when they betrayed me, and I would not be manipulated into agreeing. He's pushing very hard for this and trying to guilt me into agreeing. I know I might be overly harsh in my response to this, so I wanted to ask if people believe I'm wrong or not. Am I the idiot for not allowing my ex-husband and my former best friend to take my kids out of state to help her heal and recover? Your kids are not your cheating ex's wife's emotional support animals. He can get a dog. Dogs love you even if you are a complete idiot. You don't pull kids out of school just to make yourself feel better. That is completely inappropriate. If the side piece turned wife is that emotionally unstable that he's going around stating that she might unalive herself if she doesn't get what she wants, what parent would want to encourage her to base her mental health on the presence of OP's young children? Also, he really brought up human decency. How ironic given that he had an affair with his wife's best friend, he has no right to go around talking about human decency. Just to add that, it's messed up that he's trying to force young kids to be solely responsible for her recovery and make them her emotional support system. I'd be contacting your lawyer and making it clear they're trying to force my kids into an adult role that's mentally harming them. And I do think it's about time the kids learn why the marriage and friendship broke up, because I can see this going bad fast for your kids. I, 28 male, made my wife, 28, a replica of a house known to fans of a musician but wouldn't mean much to others. It's about 2 feet tall and wasn't very complicated to build, but my wife had said a few times over the last year that she thought it would be cool to have for little trinkets. She's like a crow with her trinkets. I love it. She didn't know I was making it for her, but I sneakily involved her in its creation by having her make a couple of TikToks when we were out together so I could get the colours right. She has no idea. LOL. I was excited, so I showed a picture to my brother. He told me it was cool but didn't get the purpose. He showed it to my niece Ava, a young teen female, who said what it was and said she wanted one too. My brother asked if I would give it to Ava for her birthday. I said no, it's for my wife, but I could make one with Ava. It would help teach her some basic woodworking skills which they no longer have in schools here. I'd like that. My brother said if it was so easy, then I could make a second one for my wife and just give this one to Ava since her birthday is at the end of the month. Again, I said no, this was done specifically for my wife. He seemed to accept that, but then came back to me and said, "Isn't it a little weird to make a dollhouse for an adult woman?" I told him it was not a dollhouse, just a fancy shelf. He argued that this makes it worse because Ava would actually play with it. He must have gone to complain to Mom about it, he's the younger brother, because Mom called me to tell me that it was stupid to give my wife a dollhouse. I tried to explain that it wasn't a dollhouse, but she just kept saying, "That's stupid." This weekend I was at their house and Ava kept bringing up the house and laying it on thick with statements like, "I've always wanted one just like it." She kept asking why my wife wanted a dollhouse. I said it wasn't a dollhouse, but she kept asking why she needed a dollhouse. I told my brother that he was encouraging his kid to be manipulative, and I really didn't like it, so I was going to leave. He told me that I was dangling the house over her head like McDonald's and teasing her, and that it made me a bad uncle. Being a good uncle is important to me, and I do feel for the girl because she's a big fan too. I admit I have a blind spot for this because I don't have kids, and maybe I should have shared the picture with my brother. Am I really the idiot for not just giving it to her? Yes, it was easy to make, and I could make another quickly. Edit, Ava isn't my brother's biological daughter. There's a long story involved that I didn't want to add, but I should have realised the age would be surprising. I still see her as my niece, but I understand why that would be alarming. Nothing bad happened or anything. I'm guessing the dollhouse is a replica of the Lover house. If it's anything like I'm imagining or what I've seen online, it's more like a fancy storage display for her Taylor Swift memorabilia rather than a toy anyway. Not the idiot in either case, OP. It's your creation that you get to give to whoever you want. I think it's an awesome present for your wife, and your brother is an entitled idiot who's raising his daughter also to be an entitled idiot, and she is being manipulative. Your brother and niece need to learn the word no. I wouldn't even make a second one with the niece, especially after they sent your mom after you. She and your brother are being manipulative, and I wouldn't reward that even if your niece all of a sudden decided to help you make one. I'd be like, nope, offer gone, no more, done. If it's so easy, let your brother and niece make one together as a bonding experience, just the two of them. My husband is the only boy in his family of 7, and he's always been the man of the house. When we got together, we moved very fast. We moved in together, got married, and got pregnant with our baby within the first year and a half of our relationship. So I never really got close to his family, but we got along well, or so I thought, up until we agreed to stop paying his mom's bills. We were paying them so she could get on her feet, but with the baby coming, we just thought it wasn't very smart of us to continue using a good portion of our money and savings on his mom's rent and bills. We could be putting that towards our baby and his future. This upset the whole house, and everybody started to tell us how they really felt. Well, not even us, just me. They think I'm corrupting his head, making him distance himself from them. I took their leader and support, and I'm just like, what the heck? This man and I have a family. I'm not taking anything away from them. We're his family now too. His mom talks about my baby and me on Facebook constantly, and I say nothing to this lady. Literally. My husband had a birthday dinner on Sunday, and it was very awkward and unfriendly. They ignored my presence, except for 2 sisters, and were shady the whole dinner, but I never said a thing. Towards the end of the dinner, his mom comes and tries to take my son out of my arms without even saying a word to me. I'm like, what the heck? You don't even say a word to me, but can you come and try and take my baby out of my arms? After you've been constantly talking about my son and me on Facebook as a 50 to 60-year-old woman? Really? I just push her hands away and she starts yelling, I can't take my grandbaby in the middle of the restaurant. I just left y'all. They're all talking about how I ruined his birthday dinner and want to make everything about me, but I just want respect. It's Wednesday and they're still blowing my husband's phone up about this. I'm honestly confused. OMG, she tried to snatch your baby? That's insane. You're totally not the idiot for pushing her hands away. That's your kid. And they're all acting like you owe them. Seriously? Your mother-in-law is disrespectful given the context of her past actions. But why's your husband not respecting you by standing up for you? Exactly, where is the so-called husband? Why isn't he dealing with his family, putting them back into their lane and setting boundaries? OP doesn't have an in-law issue. Not really. OP has a husband issue. She wouldn't have an in-law issue if she didn't have a husband issue. This is why people are advised to get to know each other before getting married. Maybe OP will take that advice before her next wedding. Their leader and support, allegedly, but the family isn't willing to listen to his weak idiot simpering of, "No, don't, stop it, bad, wah." Sure seems like it. This marriage is probably not going to last long. The way they speeded to the married with kid point in 1.5 years, that's how quickly they will speed to the divorce with a custody battle and parenting at point 2, where grandma is poisoning the kid against mom for bonus points. Especially if hubby doesn't find a backbone, doesn't shake off the emotional incest, starts to stand up for his wife and child, and sets boundaries with his family. My wife and I have been married for 10 years and together for 12. We have 2 children. My sister-in-law Jenna is a single mom as her husband sadly passed away 7 years ago. When Jenna's husband passed away, my wife and I provided support for Jenna and her daughter because it was a really traumatic time for them. Over the years, my wife and I spent a lot of time over at Jenna's house, and she would come over to our house. I also developed a really strong bond with my niece. My wife, my children, and I had a strong connection with Jenna and her daughter. We were a tight-knit group. That was until a few months ago when Jenna confessed something to both me and my wife. We were all intoxicated and having a good time, and Jenna just kind of blurted out that she had developed feelings for me. I was shocked, and Jenna just burst out into tears and said many things, like how she was really grateful I was a father figure to her daughter. I don't really remember too much from that night, except that my wife kicked Jenna out of our house after that. My wife and I had a talk about it the next day, and my wife was not happy at all. She said she'd suspected this for years, the way Jenna was acting around me, and she couldn't believe how Jenna betrayed her like that. My wife said we would cut off all contact with Jenna, and I did accept it. My wife told me to block Jenna, which I did. However, I feel like this whole arrangement has been a bit harsh, especially towards my niece. My niece has been texting me a lot, and I've shown my wife the text, telling her it was unfair that we were punishing our niece too. My wife told me it was a consequence of Jenna's actions. However, last night when my niece sent a long and sad text about how she and her mom were feeling, I felt really bad and had to talk about it with my wife. I told my wife to stop mistreating Jenna and her daughter, especially after they both went through a traumatic time. I told my wife it was wrong what Jenna did, but at least have some sympathy. I told my wife to imagine if she were in Jenna's shoes and then one night tragically lost me. That would scar her for her entire lifetime. However, my wife got sad and broke down in tears after I said that. She didn't say anything except that she loved me, and she didn't speak to me for the rest of the night. I do feel guilty about what I said. I didn't intend to make my wife feel like this. Was I the idiot? You are the idiot. You're enjoying the attention and ruining your marriage even more that you dare to defend the guilty party to your wife. JFC, you're not the niece's dad, and highly likely your sister-in-law is using her daughter to guilt-trip you to stay close. Take a few steps back, and by a few, I mean back up and put some walls in a fortress between you and them. The attachments that are formed are unhealthy, and you need to discourage them for the sake of your own family. Also, the wife said she suspected for years and kept quiet and supported Jenna through her grief. The torment to think for years that your sister has feelings for your husband, that's the ultimate betrayal, and she must have felt like crap just thinking it. Now Jenna confirms the wife was right along, and OP dares to try to guilt her for creating distance. That's messed up, OP. Major idiot. I, 45 female, am married to John, 50 male. We have 2 daughters, one together, Hannah, 25, and one from his previous relationship, Alexa, 30. Alexa is older and always got everything new, and Hannah always got the hand-me-downs. She never had much of her own things, so I wanted to make her wedding special. Both girls have gotten engaged. I told Hannah I would pay for her wedding. I've been saving her whole life. Alexa asked John if he and her bio mom would be paying for her wedding, and he said no. He said she should have a wedding that she and her fiancé can afford. The girls went out to lunch the other day, and Alexa found out I was paying for Hannah's wedding. Alexa called John, crying that it was unfair that I was paying for Hannah's wedding. John thinks we should split the money evenly between the 2 girls. I told him no because I was the one who'd been saving the money. I told him that if he wanted to pay for Alexa's wedding, then he should speak with her mother so they could see how much they could help. John asked me if I'd be willing to give any money that was left from Hannah's wedding to Alexa. I told him no. I was giving Hannah the whole account and she could spend the money on what she wanted. Am I the idiot? Edit, John asked me to be a stay-at-home mom when I got pregnant with Hannah. During that time, John was in charge of all the finances. That's why Hannah always had hand-me-downs. John said he wasn't going to buy her something new if we had something that worked. I started working when Hannah was 10 years old. John and I decided he would split Alexa's costs with her mother and that we would split Hannah's costs. During that conversation, I told John that I would make a savings account for Hannah. At that time, I hoped I could save enough money to pay for her wedding or a down payment on a house. Obviously, I didn't know how much I'd save. We didn't discuss it again because there wasn't a need to. Once I started working, our finances became separate. Alexa's mom had full custody and we had her every other weekend. During those weekends, John made all her parenting decisions. OP, John has realized what a crap parent he is by not providing for his child as you have for yours. Now he's trying to make it your problem. It's not. It's his and his ex's. Give Hannah the money and don't be an idiot to her. You're holding it against your stepdaughter that you took her old clothes for your daughter rather than buying new ones. I do the same thing, but what does wearing hand-me-downs have to do with a wedding? Technically not the idiot because it's your money and so forth, but that stretch of a justification makes me think that deep down you know this might not be the best decision. You're certainly telling your stepdaughter that you don't view her as a true daughter. Again, that's your right in some sense, but she also has the right to treat you accordingly. I would. Update: Hannah told her fiancé what had happened. Hannah's fiancé is only a child and his parents said they would pay for half of the wedding. I told Hannah the money was still hers, she could use it for the other half and use the leftover money for a house. She and her fiancé are very grateful. I told her that tomorrow I'd go to talk to someone about getting their money in a trust of some kind in her name, since right now it's in a savings account with both of our names.